Fellas, when a good man walks away not out of hate, but out of self-respect, a woman finally sees his worth. But by then, it's too late. At first, she doesn't even fully register what's happening. It's a surreal moment, almost like a bad dream. She notices your absence, sure, but she doesn't instantly panic. She assumes it's temporary. Maybe you just need some space. Maybe you're trying to teach her a lesson. Maybe in a few days you'll come back like you always have. But as hours turn into days and days turn into silence, something shifts in her gut. It's not just that you're gone. It's the energy, the effort, the availability. It's vanished. The first wave that hits her is shock. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet, creeping kind that settles in her chest and makes everything else feel numb. You see, she never truly believed you'd leave. She knew she tested your patience. She knew she pushed limits. She saw the frustration in your eyes, heard the disappointment in your tone, but deep down she always thought you'd stay. She had watched you forgive her again and again. She had watched you bend, compromise, and hold on, even when you were hurting. That gave her a false sense of security, a dangerous one. She mistook your loyalty for weakness. She believed, even unconsciously, that you'd always be there because you always had been. So when you finally reached your breaking point, when your silence replaced your explanations, when your presence turned into a void, she couldn't believe it. The shock doesn't come from a place of love at first. It comes from disbelief, from a loss of control. She thinks, wait, he's actually done. It wasn't a loud exit. You didn't slam the door. You didn't beg her to see your worth one last time. You just left quietly, cleanly, and it's that silence that screams the loudest, because silence is final. It means there's no debate left to have, no point left to prove. It means you no longer need her to understand. That kind of silence, it shakes her. She replays your last few conversations, looks at your last messages, wonders if there was something she missed. She begins to feel the power dynamic shift for the first time. You're no longer emotionally available, no longer reacting, no longer explaining yourself. That's when the realization starts to dawn. You're no longer seeking validation. You're not waiting for her to change. You've already accepted who she is and made your decision accordingly, and that's when it truly begins to hit her. You're not just mad, you're gone. It's in this initial stage that she starts looking back, not just to remember, but to piece together the moment she lost you. Was it the time she ignored your efforts to communicate? The time she dismissed your needs as too sensitive? Was it when she assumed you'd never walk away, simply because you hadn't yet? The answers don't come right away, but the questions are louder than ever, and they keep echoing in the quiet spaces where your presence used to be. She starts to see you differently, not as the man who stayed too long, but as the man who finally had the strength to leave. And that terrifies her, because the truth is, she never thought you'd be the one to walk away. She thought she could take her time growing up, giving back, being present. She thought she had you on pause. But now she realizes she never had control. She never had forever. And for the first time in a long time, she feels the weight of losing something she can't get back. When the initial shock begins to fade, what takes its place is something far more personal, an aching hit to her ego. At first, she might not recognize it for what it is. She'll call it confusion, maybe even disbelief. But underneath all of that, what she's really feeling is the unsettling truth that she's not as irreplaceable as she once thought she was. And that stings in a way she didn't anticipate. You see, there was a time when she thought she had you completely, mind, body, and soul. She thought she was the center of your world, the standard you measured others against. In her mind, no matter what happened, you would always come back. You were consistent. You chased, you reassured, you checked in. Even when she pulled away, acted cold, played games, there you were, steady and devoted. So when that devotion disappears, when you suddenly stop reacting, stop chasing, stop explaining, it sends her spinning, not because she misses the love right away, but because she starts to realize that the power she believed she held over you was only real for as long as you allowed it to be. And now that power is gone. She isn't used to that. She's used to being pursued, to being the one who decides when things end. She thought the ball was in her court, but now she's standing alone on the court, and you've walked off the field entirely. It's not just your absence that bothers her, it's your indifference. The shift in your energy is undeniable. You don't check in, you don't watch her stories. You don't ask how she's doing or show signs of lingering emotions. And that absence becomes a mirror, a harsh one. She starts to ask herself questions she never had to ask before. Did I matter to him as much as I thought I did? Was he really that into me? Or did I just overestimate my value in his life? For someone who may have built part of her identity around the idea of being desired, that's a brutal kind of realization. And here's where the ego truly begins to crumble. She sees that you've shifted your attention inward. Maybe you're focusing on your goals now. Maybe you're glowing up in silence. Maybe you're not even dating anyone else. You're just at peace. That right there is what really shakes her, because she always assumed that if you ever left, you'd be broken. You'd struggle without her. You'd text her in the middle of the night, wondering what went wrong. She imagined herself as the one with options, the one who could move on easily, but now she's watching you do what she thought only she could do: heal, grow, and elevate without looking back. She may still get attention from other men. She may still get likes, compliments, and invitations, but none of it feels the same, because deep down she knows it wasn't just attention she had from you. It was devotion, real interest, presence. You gave her access to a version of you that not everyone gets, and now that it's gone, she's learning something she never wanted to learn. Being desired is not the same as being valued. And the value you gave her, the emotional safety, the loyalty, the patience, that's not something easily replaced. The ego begins to spiral at this point. She may start comparing herself to other women you might be talking to. She wonders who's filling the space she once occupied. She doesn't want to admit it, but jealousy creeps in, not because you're with someone else, but because she no longer has control over your focus. That spotlight she once basked in has moved, and now she's just another chapter in your story instead of the main character. Pride tells her to pretend she doesn't care, to act unfazed. Maybe she posts pictures, quotes, or memories meant to look casual, but designed to get your attention. But when there's no response, when her bait goes ignored, that's when the ego fully cracks, because now it's undeniable. The version of you she knew, the man who once centered her, no longer exists. You've evolved. And you did it without her. And so, she's left confronting a painful truth. She was never entitled to your loyalty. She mistook your patience for permanence. She assumed you couldn't do better, that you wouldn't walk away. And now, with every quiet day that passes, she feels the weight of that mistake settle in her chest. The confidence she once had starts to feel like a mask. The certainty she once carried about her place in your life dissolves into doubt. And the worst part is she has no one to blame. Not really, because deep down she knows. You gave her every chance. You were all in, and it was her ego that told her she'd never have to lose you to appreciate you. When the shock has faded and the ego has cracked, a deeper emotion starts to emerge, reflection. It creeps in quietly, often when the world is still, when the distractions wear off and there's nothing left to scroll through, nothing to drink, no one around to validate her. It's in those moments, usually late at night, that the weight of everything she had and lost starts to surface. The silence you left behind begins to echo, not with accusations or anger, but with memories, vivid, detailed, unfiltered memories. The ones she once ignored or brushed aside because she thought they didn't matter. The ones she thought she'd never miss. She starts to remember your voice, not just the sound of it, but the tone, the way you spoke to her with patience, even when you were frustrated, the way you listened, really listened, even when she wasn't making sense. She remembers the random messages you'd send throughout the day, just to check in or tell her you were thinking about her. At the time, they may have felt repetitive or unnecessary. She may have even rolled her eyes, thinking you were being too much. But now she replays them like songs from a past life, each one carrying weight, meaning, and regret. She remembers how you looked at her when she wasn't trying, when she was tired, in sweats, with messy hair, and how your eyes still softened, how your attention never wavered. She remembers how you made her feel secure, how you noticed the small things, how you remembered the details she didn't even realize she shared. You created an emotional blueprint, one that now no one else seems to match. She may have thought you were just being nice, but now she sees it differently. Now she sees that it was love, real love, consistent, stable, reliable, and it's only in your absence that the magnitude of that love becomes clear. She starts to think about the arguments, not from a place of anger, but from a place of clarity. She remembers the times you tried to explain how you felt, how vulnerable you were in trying to open up. And she remembers how she shut it down, how she dismissed your emotions as overreactions, labeled your concerns as too sensitive or insecure. At the time, she felt powerful doing that, like she was setting boundaries, staying in control. But now she sees how you were just trying to connect, how you weren't being weak. You were being real, and she rejected it, rejected you. She replays the nights you were there when you didn't have to be. When you drove across town just to see her for 5 minutes, when you waited patiently for her to call back, when you stayed on the phone even though you were tired, just because she said she didn't want to be alone. She remembers how you tried to understand her moods, even when she didn't understand them herself. She thinks about how rare that kind of effort is. How, even when she made things difficult, you chose compassion over ego. She didn't see it then, she sees it now. Reflection doesn't hit her all at once. It builds slowly. It shows up in the places she goes, in the songs she hears, in the habits she still carries that were once created through your presence. She remembers how she used to send you memes or inside jokes, and now her fingers hesitate over the share button because you're no longer there to receive them. She remembers the routines, how you used to talk before bed, how you used to check in during the day, how you used to plan little things for the future. It's not just the memories that hurt, it's the space they used to occupy in her day-to-day life. That space is still there, but it's empty now, and that emptiness is loud. She might talk to others about you, asking mutual friends how you're doing, pretending it's casual, but hoping to hear that maybe you miss her too. But even if she hears your name, it stings. because it reminds her that you're living a life that no longer includes her, that you're building forward while she's stuck looking back. And the more she reflects, the more she realizes that she didn't just lose a boyfriend or a partner. She lost someone who genuinely tried to love her in a world where genuine effort is rare. What hurts the most in this stage isn't that she remembers you. It's that she finally understands you. All the things you tried to express, all the ways you showed your love, all the patience you gave her, it all makes sense now. The version of you that she dismissed or took for granted is now the version she craves, and it's a version she knows she may never get back, not because you hate her, not because you're being petty, but because you grew, you left, you let go, and now all she has left are echoes of moments she didn't appreciate when they were happening, moments that now live rent-free in her memory, refusing to fade, no matter how hard she tries to forget. Once the reflection begins to settle in, it slowly gives way to a much heavier and more humbling emotion, regret. And this isn't the kind of superficial regret that someone feels when they miss a text or forget a birthday. No, this is deep, soul-stirring regret, the kind that comes from realizing that you had something rare, something beautiful, and you didn't just lose it. You let it slip through your fingers because you thought it would always be there. This kind of regret isn't loud. It doesn't show up with dramatic tears or performative apologies. It builds slowly, quietly, and painfully. It grows in the pit of her stomach, gnawing at her in moments when she least expects it. She starts thinking about the opportunities she had to make things right, moments when she could have chosen to be softer, more open, more understanding. She remembers the nights you reached out, clearly needing reassurance or clarity, and she chose pride instead of vulnerability. She remembers when you tried to open up emotionally and she rolled her eyes, or minimized your feelings because she wasn't ready to sit with her own. Those moments come back in flashes, and each time they hit harder. Because now, with space and clarity, she understands what you were really asking for. You weren't asking her to be perfect. You were asking her to meet you halfway, to care, to try. And instead, she kept waiting for you to prove yourself over and over again, while giving you less and less in return. She regrets not appreciating the simple things, the way you made her feel safe without having to say much, the way you protected her energy by shielding her from chaos, even when you were dealing with your own. She regrets all the little times she could have said thank you and didn't, the times you supported her when she was down, held her when she was anxious, gave her space when she was overwhelmed. Yet she rarely reciprocated with the same level of emotional maturity. At the time, she justified it, told herself she didn't need to express it because he already knows how I feel. But now she realizes you didn't know, or maybe you did at first, but slowly, through her silence and indifference, you stopped believing it. The weight of those missed opportunities starts to crush her. She thinks about what it cost her to not say the things that needed to be said. She thinks about how different things might have turned out if she had just chosen honesty over ego. And not just once, but consistently. She begins to replay not just the big arguments, but the small, subtle moments that could have changed the direction of the relationship if she had been just a little more self-aware. Maybe if she had just taken that one conversation seriously. Maybe if she had listened to understand instead of listening to defend. Maybe if she had shown a little more softness when you were hurting instead of pushing you away with sarcasm and silence. Maybe, just maybe, you'd still be there. Regret makes her realize that love isn't about grand gestures or constant passion. It's about the quiet consistency, the trust, the effort. It's about how someone makes you feel when no one is watching. And that's what she truly regrets, the fact that you made her feel loved deeply and consistently, and she never made you feel the same in return. Or if she did, it was rare and conditional, always tangled up in mixed signals and emotional walls. She realizes that in trying to maintain control, she lost the one person who never asked her to be anything other than herself, the one who showed up even when she was difficult, the one who stayed even when she pushed. And now that you're gone, really gone, she finally understands what you meant when you said love shouldn't feel like a war. Regret is a slow burn. It doesn't go away with distractions or rebounds. In fact, those things only make it worse. Because the more she tries to fill the void, the more she realizes how unique your presence was. The conversations, the chemistry, the calmness you brought to her chaos. It's not something she can find in just anyone. She might try to convince herself that it's over for a reason, that it's best to move on, that she deserves someone new or better. But deep down she knows the truth. It wasn't that you weren't right for her. It's that she wasn't ready for someone who was. She begins to understand that relationships aren't ruined in a single moment. They erode slowly, painfully, through repeated neglect and missed chances. And now, every time she thinks of you, it's not with bitterness, it's with longing. Because she knows you didn't leave because you stopped caring. You left because you couldn't keep giving to someone who wasn't giving back. You reached your limit, your threshold for disappointment, and now she's the one waking up each day wishing she had done more, said more, shown more. Regret doesn't just remind her of what she lost. It reminds her that she had the power to prevent it, and she didn't. And that's the kind of truth that doesn't fade. It lingers, it stays. As time continues to pass, and the emotions cycle through shock, ego collapse, reflection, and deep regret, another powerful realization begins to surface within her. She starts to feel your absence, not just emotionally, but physically, spiritually, energetically. It's not just about missing someone anymore. It becomes a visceral recognition of the void your presence once filled. It's in the little things first, the things that seem insignificant to outsiders, but to her, they're tied to you in a way that can't be separated. She walks into places you once went together, maybe a cafe, a quiet street, or even just her own bedroom, and suddenly it hits her. The way your presence made everything feel grounded. You had a stillness about you, a kind of quiet strength that didn't need to say much to be felt. It was in your eye contact, in the way you listened, in the way you made decisions. That kind of energy doesn't just disappear, it lingers when it's gone, but instead of calming her now, it haunts her. Because she realizes that her world doesn't feel as stable anymore. She used to take for granted how solid it felt with you around, and now things feel hollow, less secure, less steady. She notices the difference in the way other men interact with her. Maybe she still gets attention, flirty messages, dinner invitations, compliments, but none of it penetrates the surface. It all feels temporary, transactional, shallow, because even if they're charming or attractive, they lack that unshakable masculine presence you had. They lack the depth, they lack the emotional maturity, they lack the authenticity. You didn't just show up. You led, you anchored, you created safety with your consistency. She begins to understand that what she lost wasn't just a partner. It was a man who brought clarity to her chaos, direction to her indecision, and protection to her vulnerability. She starts noticing how often she used to lean on you, even in subtle ways. The way she would vent and you'd absorb it without judgment. The way you seemed to sense when she was off, even when she said, "I'm fine." The way you offered solutions, not because you wanted to control her, but because you genuinely cared. Now, in your absence, she finds herself overwhelmed by things she once shrugged off. Simple problems feel bigger. Everyday stress feels heavier, because she doesn't have that emotional buffer anymore, the one you used to provide without ever making her feel like a burden. And then there's the loneliness, not the kind that comes from being single, but the kind that comes from knowing you once had someone who saw you, truly saw you, and now they're gone. She might still be surrounded by people. She might still laugh, still post selfies, still say she's doing fine. But in the quiet moments, when the world stops spinning, she feels it. That ache in her chest, that space where your energy used to exist. You used to feel like home, and now she's homeless in her own life. No amount of distractions or social interactions can replicate what it felt like to be in your arms, to feel your steady breathing, your warm touch, your calming voice telling her everything would be okay. The absence becomes especially loud when she starts to grow, ironically, because there comes a point when, through all the pain, she begins to mature. She becomes more emotionally aware. She starts to see her patterns. She acknowledges how her wounds led her to push you away. And in that growth, she wishes more than anything that you were still there, not because she needs saving, but because she finally feels like the kind of woman who could meet you where you were. The version of herself she's becoming is the version you always saw in her potential, and that stings in a whole new way, because she's not just missing the comfort of you, she's mourning the future she now realizes you were trying to build together. You were trying to lead her, but she resisted. You were trying to teach her, but she pushed back. You were trying to elevate her, but she misread your intentions as control. And now, with the wisdom that only distance can give, she begins to understand that your presence in her life wasn't restrictive. It was expansive. You challenged her because you saw her worth. You called her out because you refused to let her settle for mediocrity. You expected more, not out of arrogance, but because you believed she was capable of more, and she sees that now. She feels it in every decision she makes, every time she chooses peace over drama, truth over pride, accountability over blame. All the lessons you tried to give her, she's finally starting to apply them, but you're no longer there to witness it. That's when the absence becomes unbearable, not because you're gone, but because she finally understands why you were there in the first place. And she understands what she lost. She didn't just lose a man who loved her. She lost a man who was guiding her into becoming the best version of herself. And now, with every step forward she takes, with every mistake she avoids because of something you once said, she feels both gratitude and heartbreak. Gratitude that you were once in her life, heartbreak that she didn't appreciate it while you were. Because now, the silence you left behind doesn't feel empty. It feels like a lesson she can't unlearn, a presence that continues to shape her even in your absence. Eventually, after the initial shock, the ego collapse, the deep reflection, the suffocating regret, and the heavy, lingering absence, she begins to feel something even more unsettling: powerlessness. A sinking realization that no matter how much she misses you, no matter how clearly she now sees the value you brought, and no matter how much she's changed or grown since the moment you left, she cannot undo what has already been done. There's a certain helplessness in knowing that you moved on, not out of malice, but out of necessity, because at some point you stopped waiting, you stopped hoping, you stopped pouring yourself into someone who couldn't or wouldn't meet you halfway. And in that decision, You reclaimed your power. She feels powerless because everything that used to make her feel in control, her charm, her ability to pull you back in with a single text, her emotional leverage, none of it works anymore. The old tricks fall flat. The energy you once gave her so freely has been cut off completely. Where she once felt she could always fall back on your affection, she now finds a wall that wasn't there before. She might test the waters, send a casual message like a story, leave a breadcrumb, but all she's met with is indifference, or worse, silence. And that silence doesn't just confuse her, it terrifies her, because it tells her something more brutal than anger ever could. You no longer care, and that's the one thing she was never prepared for. There was a time when she could feel your energy from a distance, when she knew, no matter what was going on, that you still held space for her, that you still hoped somewhere deep down that she would come back around and choose you the way you chose her. That hope was her safety net. As long as it existed, she never truly had to confront what it would mean to lose you forever. But now, that hope is gone. She feels it, not just in your silence, but in your energy. The way you don't react, the way you don't look back, the way your life seems to be moving forward with or without her. And the worst part, she knows she did this, not out of cruelty, but out of neglect, out of fear, out of not recognizing the blessing she had in front of her. She starts to understand that a man only breaks when he's been ignored too long, that a man who loves deeply doesn't just walk away on a whim. He detaches slowly, painfully, and only after giving chance after chance after chance. So when he finally goes silent, when he finally lets go, it's not a tactic, it's not a game, it's closure. And now she's on the receiving end of that final decision. And unlike every time before, this time she knows there's no rewinding the clock. No do-overs, no late night apology that will bring back what once was. You've stepped out of the emotional prison she kept you in, and now she's left holding the key. Too little, too late. Powerlessness makes her rethink everything. It makes her question who she is without you. Because for a long time she defined her strength by how much control she had in the relationship. How easily she could sway your emotions, how quickly she could draw you back in. But now, with that power gone, she feels exposed, vulnerable, stripped of the one thing she thought she could always count on, your forgiveness. She realizes that the love she once thought was guaranteed was actually something fragile, something alive, something that needed nurturing. And she let it die. She watches as you begin to thrive, maybe quietly, maybe publicly, but either way she sees it. She feels it. You're calmer now, more focused. You're investing in yourself, in your peace, in your goal. And while she once hoped that seeing you do well would bring her comfort, it only sharpens her awareness of what she lost. She sees the version of you she always wanted, the one who finally chose himself. And it kills her to know that she could have had that version of you. But she spent so long trying to change you instead of supporting you, trying to control you instead of growing with you. She may even try to rebuild herself now, start healing, start leveling up, start becoming the kind of woman who could love without fear, without sabotage. But in the quiet corners of her mind, she knows she's not doing it for herself. Not fully. A part of her is doing it in the hopes that maybe one day you'll notice, that maybe you'll circle back, that maybe you'll give her another chance. And yet, the more she evolves, the more she realizes how unlikely that is. Because you've reached a level of peace that doesn't need validation. You've found a life that no longer includes her as its center. You've found yourself. And so she remains in a limbo of emotional paralysis, not because she lacks love, but because she now has too much of it, and nowhere to put it. The man she finally learned how to love is the same man who had to walk away for her to learn how. And that truth is something no amount of growth can undo. It sits with her. It stays in her eyes, her breath, her quiet moments, because she doesn't just miss you. She misses the chance to love you the right way, now that she finally knows how. And that is the cruelest irony of all. By the time she truly understands your worth, by the time she's ready to give what you always deserved, you're already gone. Not out of spite, but because you finally chose yourself. And now, as she watches your absence shape her more than your presence ever could, she learns the most painful lesson of all. Sometimes love doesn't get a second chance. Sometimes the cost of not valuing a good man is losing him forever. And in that silence you left behind, she hears everything she refused to listen to before.